Hello, investors, and welcome to another edition of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets, where we are always bringing you interesting and exciting companies. But today, I also want to stress we are trying to focus on those companies that have projects that will truly have that pathway to production from here all the way through. They have the right location, infrastructure, and of course, they have the project size. And that's why I'm glad to be rejoined by an old friend, Greg Hall, Managing Director of Alligator Energy. It's South Australian uranium company, in case those of you that don't know. But we're going to talk all about it and how we're going to go from here to production. And with that, a lot of pressure too, Greg. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg. Nice to talk to you.
Good. Hey, Greg, for people that are not familiar with your uranium samphire project, can you just give everyone just a small overview?
Yeah, it's a deposit of uranium sitting 80 meters below the surface in horizontal sand beds, which was discovered in 2007 or so. It had initial advanced work done, which went into hiatus through the low price time in the last 10 years. We acquired the project in 2020 and have resurrected it with additional drilling and additional detailed work. Now, the important thing about this project is uranium that's in permeable sands in a saline aquifer at about 80 meters depth is amenable to solution mining, which we call the in-situ recovery method of mining. We
Right.
drill a series of vertical holes. You circulate the groundwater, add in an lixiviant, which dissolves the uranium like sugar in hot coffee, brings that uranium out as a solution, and then you extract it through an IX plant on the surface, which is a plant that uses resin beads to extract the uranium into a clean solution. You then precipitate it, dry it, calcine it, and put it into drums. So that's the process. It's the same process in use at Heathgate's Beverley and 4 Mile projects, and that's been running for 25 years here in South Australia. The same process that Boss Energy has just started up again at the Honeymoon project in South Australia. The same sort of process that's used in Wyoming and Texas and in Kazakhstan. So it's more than 50% of the world's uranium comes from this method of mining.
Right. And I think it's important for investors to know that In-situ, as you just mentioned there, trialed multiple jurisdictions. Clearly, it works. And now also on the Samphire itself, you've done a scoping study. Can you just give some various metrics in it?
Yeah, certainly. So we did an initial scoping study in March, early March 23. We updated that in December 23 with a larger resource. So the basics of the project are it's a 1.2 million pounds per year uranium production, and uranium is outputs measured in pounds rather than tons. It's only a capital cost of about $130 million. And that's the key thing about in-situ recovery mining. It's a lower capital because you're not physically digging or moving any rock or material. It's just a
Right.
process plant managing solutions. A payback of 2.5 years, a 42% return. And so it gives us an NPV of 260 million. An all-in sustaining cost we put in US dollars at $33 a pound, which is in order of similar in-situ recovery operations. Now, we did all of that scoping study at a uranium price of $75 a pound. If we lift
Right.
the price around to where it is now, up to $90 a pound, then we increase the NPV up to 370 million. Capital is virtually the same. So that scoping study on the resource we have now is economic. It's an economic project. And most ISR mines around the world start around this size, 1 to 1.2 million pound per year. Beverly started like that. UR Energy in the States started like that. Honeymoon started like at 1.5. Peninsula in the States started 1.5. So many of the ISR projects, because you can run them economically at that smaller size and adding cash flow while you then expand the resources footprint and modularize the plant and add more plant capacity. So it's a very effective technique to have a good size starter project that makes
Right.
cash, makes return, and then you can expand it from there. So Samphire is the same sort of situation as that.
Yeah, and again, we take comfort as investors that it's not the first time down this path, so to speak. There are many case precedences, as you just mentioned there. Now, Greg, also before we get into what's coming up, I just think it's quite good to digress for a second, forming the right people on the ground to do what needs to be done. Can you just talk to us about your team? Because one thing you've been very, very clear on is hiring people that know what they're doing.
Well, that's correct. I mean, apart from myself and on our board, two of our board members have had experience in long-term experience in uranium operations and the executive operations around uranium. We've recruited Andrea Marsland-Smith, she's had more than 15 years experience as a senior manager at Heathgate's Beverley and 4 Mile projects. She led the team that discovered the 4 Mile project, brought it into operations. She's done every task from managing geology and operations in well fields, right through to the full operations of the site, through to government liaison, Indigenous work, etc. So she's really familiar with ISR operations, management, development, closure, all of those aspects of it. So we recruited Andrea, and then Andrea has over time recruited a full team under her, a management team which has operated ISR. So we have a principal geologist, we have a senior hydrogeologist, we have a principal chemist, we have environmental manager and a project manager, all have run these sort of operations. Now, we now have recruiting under them younger professionals, some who have a ISR experience, but some who we're training up because you need to
Right.
train people into this game. So that team's in place. It is an ISR production team, and they are working on expanding the resource, getting ready for the field trial, where you really set the parameters of how the project will work and lead into the feasibility. So that's the next 12 months work is that, and that's going to really bring us from this exploration company with a resource to a developing company. So the next 12 months are very important for us.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the field recovery trials, are they forecast to start? I believe it's in Q3.
We are still going through the final approvals of the retention lease that we need to be able to operate that. And we're doing that now. Then there's the operating plan that needs to be authorised, so that's a bit of a tick off, but we've got to do that in the right manner of how we operate to the conditions. So we'll be constructing in Q3 and operating in Q4. It's a task which you've got to. The approval of a trial like this is like the approval of a small mine. So
Okay.
you've really got to go through that detailed process with the regulators. You get public feedback, you get individual government department feedback. You work through that in the response document, which we put in March, and now we're going through additional questions from the departments to get that finalised. So, subject to getting that retention lease approved, yes, we'll be constructing and operating in the second half this year of that field trial.
Right. And a trial, how long does it last about?
Um, it's really only about a 3 to 4 month period. So
So
so you
short.
you do only short. You only do 3 rings of holes scattered through the area of the ore body. These holes are around 10 meters radius with 5 or 6 holes in each ring. One at a time, we circulate the groundwaters. We bring it up. We lower the salinity a bit with an RO plant, which helps the process through the plant. We use lixiviants to remove the uranium from the sand beds, come up in solution through screens. We don't bring up any fines or anything up into the plant, process it, extract, and really looking for the recovery curves of uranium out of the well fields, if you like. So you get a run up of grade into the solution and then gradually tails off. And that's what you're looking for the rings, because it will tell you how many rings you need for future operation of a full-size plant.
Right.
And in the plant itself, the techniques of what's the reagent usage, the time it takes to load up the IX resins and then cleanly wash the uranium off and store that as a solution. So that process is well understood, but each site can be a little different. And that's why you've really got to, we've done bench scale testing with full cores out of the ground and with the groundwater.
Right.
So we have a good idea what the parameters are, but you've got to really prove it in situ in a pilot plant.
Yeah, and that's again having the right project, but you also need the right people, don't you?
No, that's right. And this team has operated full scale plants, but they've always all been involved in pilot process testing of new techniques and things as well. So that's where you need it. And we've got external expertise helping us as well with this. You need to manage the full team to make this work. And the good thing is, this time by the end of the year, early next year, we'll have the detailed parameters we need to kick into a feasibility study for the full plant.
Right.
And so our project manager towards the end of this year will be out there for expressions of interest for companies to help us with a feasibility study through 25.
Right. Certainly very, very important. Now, also in a very short term, exploration drilling, because certainly, as you said, that your project, 1.2 million pounds per year, there's a lot of precedents that a lot of projects started there, but they could grow bigger. Can you
Mm.
just tell us about your exploration activities?
Yeah, so we have a resource with indicated and inferred resources in the Blackbush deposit as we such, and we've identified areas where there's some historical drilling that's widely spaced on the outside, on the boundaries of that existing resource. And so we're now drilling that. And we put a release out in March or late March, which had some of the initial extensions of mineralization we found, just indicating them by drill holes and what we found. And we're
Sure.
now continuing that drilling after a break. We jump off the pastoral stations while it's lambing season for about 5 or 6 weeks. And then we're now back on there and drilling again. So during the year, we'll again put out releases about extension work where we are. By the end of the year, in November, December, we'll have an updated resource. Now, the
Okay.
important thing about the drilling we're doing this year and that updated resource is we may be able to lift our production rate for the feasibility study if we can increase this resource this year. So that lifts your NPV. It lifts the value of the project substantially if we can do that. So that's the aim for this year. And we certainly have identified areas of mineralized extension already.
Right. And is it easy enough if you do find something to bring it in to what I would say to to include that as their part of your resource?
Yeah, so it's simply a matter of where you have the resource extension, and those who've seen our presentation online,
Yeah.
you can see the layout of the resource currently, and you see to the right and to the left, or to the east and the west, if you like, these mineralized extensions. You just add well fields and you pipe it back to the same central plant. You don't need to add anything else other than additional drilling, additional pipe work to bring the new solutions from new fields back into that central plant. So once you establish a central production plant, you really can go a long way around that, even 10, 15, 20 kilometers. So
Okay.
that's the beauty of our potential resource expansion. It's not limited to just around that Blackbush deposit, but we know we've got a satellite deposit further south, which we're working to establish access to and get on the ground. And so any resource extension we add will become production in due course.
Right. And so, Greg, you've obviously already had a lot of success. Your stock price has moved up exponentially since 2020, certainly proven. But you also, at Alligator, there are some other upside optionality projects. Can you just touch on those a little bit?
Yeah, well, we've been an exploration company for a long time, well before we acquired Samphire. But we've been working in the Arnhem Land area and have 3 project zones there. We've done work on 2 of them over since 2010. Now we're into a group of tenements called Narblek North, which the advantage of that area, it doesn't have that big sandstone escarpment overlying it. It's easier exploration. So we're on our we've had 1.5 years of work there. We've now got targets to drill with reverse circulation drilling, and we're getting into that this year, starting from July onwards. So all the pre-planning work's done. We'll have our team arriving onto the site with our mobile camp around mid-June, and then getting into a drilling program there from July through to October, November. So that's important because in that Arnhem Land area, we have a lot of engagement with Indigenous traditional owners. We have employed probably over 40 Indigenous people in work up there at odd times, and now we're going to
Right.
have another 3 or 4 this year. So the good thing about it, it's the area with some of the highest grade uranium in the country, in Australia. And so it's related to the Jabiluka and uranium projects, which are just off to the side of Arnhem Land. But this is an area that you can, if you hit the right prospect and project, then you've got a 20 to 30-year mine.
Right. So certainly, again, upside optionality, and
Mm.
for everyone that is not in the scoping study, so that it is truly an upside option.
Yeah. The other project I mentioned is Big Lake Uranium in the Cooper Basin. This is
Yeah.
a greenfield site. There's been no uranium exploration work done there, just a little bit, maybe 15 years ago. But the sediments, the overlying rocks which host the Beverly, 4 Mile, Honeymoon, continue to the north and go over the top of the Cooper Basin, which is a hydrocarbon basin which has had oil and gas production for many, many years. So
Okay.
we are looking in the sediments overlying that hydrocarbon basin, but it's got all the attributes that many in situ recovery uranium fields have. You've got the right formations which can have traps of groundwater. There is uranium present in the system. Historical drilling and gamma monitoring has shown there's uranium there. Whether we have the traps that form an economic deposit, that's what we're really trying to determine. And we're only just starting that look. So we might not find it where we immediately look, but we might find it elsewhere in that area. So that's exciting for us. It's greenfields. It is high risk, of course, because greenfields can fail, but also it really would create massive upside if we find a new field for in situ recovered uranium.
Right. And again, when you pair it up with what Samphire already has there, then you really are de-risking your capital as a shareholder, which I think is critical for people to understand.
No, that's correct.
Right. Greg, we have to keep it short, but obviously it's exciting times here. You have a lot on the move, and you're somebody that it sounds like works 20 hours a day. So we're very respectful of your time. But do you have any closing remarks for everybody?
Look, I think from an investor's perspective, you've seen a lot of the uranium groups around the world now that were restart projects. So they already had an approved project, it had operated in the past, had gone into care and maintenance, and now is restarting. So that's
Right.
Paladin's Langer Heinrich. You're seeing Boss Energy at Honeymoon. You're seeing other projects overseas at UR Energy and Peninsula and Encore restarting projects that were mothballed now. And they've all taken a big run in their share price and market cap, and right, deservedly so. It's the right time to come into the market for uranium production. Then you have those projects, companies that have approved projects which have to be built. So some of them are already taking a run because they're pre-approved. So our project, we have to go through an approval, and really our market cap reflects that. We've got some years of work to be able to get forward into production, but we've got the team, the expertise in our management and board to take this project forward, and we fully intend to. The beauty of in situ recovery uranium projects is a company of our size
Right.
has and can start them up. And that's exactly what we're intending to do.
Right. Greg, thanks as always, and we'll be looking forward to the future.
Thanks very much for your time, Greg.
Bye bye.